The film's called Letters from Litein.
Okay.
And I first heard about this story back in December 2005. Someone had mentioned to me that there was a story going on at Fred Seymour Elementary School in South Calgary revolving around raising money for an orphanage in Kenya. And it turns out I actually went to the same elementary school at grade 1, grade 2, so there was an immediate connection there for me.
Oh, you went there too?
I went to the
okay.
school.
Right.
And so I met with the principal of the school and Jeff Rollheiser, who's a local Calgary songwriter, who had co-written a song called Love Will. And when I saw what they were doing at the school and some of the other projects they had done, including raising $63,000 for a village in Thailand after the tsunami, I thought, okay, the school's doing something pretty extraordinary, and I really wasn't aware of what kids were doing in school in terms of curriculum these days. And so
the elementary school has some other projects.
They've done other projects like this, not only internationally but also locally. They've done projects for things like cups and In From the Cold, and so they're doing things that were local as well as international. And I just thought, and it'd be interesting because it wasn't just fundraising; it was doing things within the curriculum. And that was what was really unique about it, because there's lots of schools that are doing fundraising, but the fact that this school was, really trying to incorporate it into their curriculum.
The idea of the global citizen.
Yeah, global citizenship, and how they could work that into whether it's an English class or a math class or a social studies class. That's what was really fascinating to me, and so that's where I came up from, the idea to follow what was happening and started on my journey of making the film.
And the whole journey started in December 2005, right? And
December 2005 is when I first heard about it.
August, like the end of the school term, plus the summer?
We filmed from basically end of January 2006 to August 2006. So we followed the story for about 8 months. So we followed the school all the way through the school year, watching some of the projects they were doing. And then the major portion of the film follows 15 people from the school over to Kenya in August 2006, where they spent 2 weeks at the orphanage, spending time with the kids and spending some of the money that they raised. And that group of 15 people included 7 children aged 7 to 12.
Yeah, I looked at the grades. They had 2nd grade, 5th grade, and 6th grade. Right?
Yeah.
So how young was the youngest one?
I think she was 7 years. 2 girls that were 7 years old, 7 years old when they made the trip.
I was reading some of the literature on your trips over there. It's like 40 hours long trip.
It's a long journey to get there. You fly through London to Nairobi, and then usually it takes, depending on the roads and how you're traveling, it takes about 5 to 7 hours to travel from Nairobi to Litein. Basically, just because the roads in Kenya are very bad, and so it's a long, slow trip to make the journey there. Long, slow, bumpy, dusty trip.
Right. How many hours of footage you end up shooting for your film?
We shot in total about 300 hours of footage.
300 hours.
So yeah, we shot a lot of footage at the school, and then we had 2 camera crews that came with us in August, and so that was, and then plus I made 2 other trips to Kenya in between that I also shot footage on. So in total it was close to about 300 hours.
Right. So the 2 trips, one of them were just the kids in the orphanage, right?
Well, I made 3 trips. The first trip I made was in March 2006, where I went with a group from Calgary called Hold Me Africa, and they're doing a palliative care project in Litein. And so I went with them because Jeff Rollheiser, the songwriter, and sound engineer Dave Horrocks were going to record the music for the CD that the school was recording with the kids in Kenya. So I went to film that portion of the project, and then I went again in August with the big group, and then I went again in November of 2006. And I was just there for a couple days, but I went to do some final filming with the kids where I had them all write letters. The kids of the orphanage all wrote letters about what their experience was like having the Canadians come and spend time with them.
Oh, okay. Right, so that's where the title of the film...
Well, the title comes from, not only that, but it also comes from just the pen pal project that was part of the whole project.
So they actually write letters to each other?
Yeah, the school has been writing... Kids from the school have been writing to the kids in the orphanage as well as some of the 2 of the schools there, and so they've been exchanging pen pal letters since March 2006, and the letter writing is still going on.
Right, and it's definitely like a life-changing experience for the kids involved in both sides.
I think it was a life-changing experience for everybody that was involved, including myself. I mean, I feel like I'm a reasonably well-exposed person news-wise as to what's happening in the world, but I think we have a very skewed idea of what Africa is really like and what's happening there. And I think the first thing that I really found when I went there the first time was just how amazing the people are, the resilience, the strength, and the joy that they have in their lives. Certainly there's lots of sadness there. There's a major struggle for the people struggling with poverty and diseases and things like that. But I think those things tend to overshadow our view of what Africa should be. And so when I made that first trip, that's when I decided, if this film is going to make any kind of difference and the project was going to make a difference, I had to get some kids from the school over to Africa, and that's how that came about.
So did the way that you were going to tell the story actually change as the film go along? Or
it did change a bit. I always had the envision that I wanted to do a more cinema verite style film, so no narration and no interviews. We did shoot lots of interviews and that just as a safety, but I always had that vision of wanting to tell the story that way, and that's how the film ended up.
How it ended up with cinema verite style.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Which I think is it's perhaps more challenging for the audience, but I think it's a much more interesting way to let the audience discover the journey, just like the people going through the story did. And as a filmmaker, I didn't want to impose my view on the story. I just wanted to show it as it happened and let the audience make the connections themselves in terms of how they feel about things. Because I think one of the biggest things that I've seen in my small experience in Africa is that there's a lot of people who want to tell you what to think, and I think it's really important to step back from that idea of, particularly being a Westerner going in and thinking that we know how to solve the problems, and instead have a film that isn't about war, isn't about AIDS, but just shows the power of connection and lets the audience make the connections and form their own ideas about how they think they could make a difference.
Yeah. I don't want to give too much of the story away, or based on the thing that you said in the article, but you were saying, like, in the last day or the last few days of the trip, someone from the orphanage actually came and talked to you guys, and even tears in his eyes, but kind of thinking at the same time that if I read it right, like he was overwhelmed a little bit by the outside view of changing the things. Like, can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I think what's really interesting is that difficulties in Africa are a very relative thing in terms of how do you help and what need is. Need is a very relative thing, and you get
our expectations are very different.
You get perspective on need every day that you're there, and the kids that are living in the children's home, and I'm sure it's the same in other orphanages. I mean, they're compared to other kids, they're doing very well. But what we saw was that there were still lots of needs in the orphanage. But I think not only people who run the orphanage, but also people within the community question their feeling as well. These kids are well looked after, particularly when you compare them to other kids who aren't in the orphanage and don't have parents and they're struggling on their own. But that's not to say that the kids in the orphanage don't still have needs. They still have tremendous needs in terms of emotional support, nutritional support, all these things that go into formulating a healthy human being, and I think that kind of gets lost because everybody there is struggling for survival. And what was said to us by one of the people who left the home is, why are you here helping these kids when there's so many other kids that have greater needs than these? And I think some of it comes from, perhaps there's a little bit of guilt there in terms of feeling that now they're going to have too much compared to others, and how that will be viewed in the community. And so these are some of the issues that the group were presented with that I think are really important philosophical and moral, ethical issues that need to be discussed in terms of when you're doing aid work, and what does it mean to give aid, and what is the impact of what you're doing. And so what I hope the film does is to present some of these issues and get people talking about, what does it mean to help, and how do you involve, or how should you be involving the local people in determining their own fate, because it's very presumptuous of us to go in and say that we know how to solve the problems, because we don't. Africa's a very different culture, it's a different place, and I think it's very important for us when we're going in to assist that we really listen to what the people there have to say and what their ideas are, and then to work together to to try to accomplish what needs to be done.
And in your article, you mentioned that the kids even got themselves involved about the view of caning, right? Caning is it's used as a tool in the area, but the kids from Calgary didn't like it.
Yeah. Well, not even just the kids from Calgary. I mean,
and you guys,
what's revealed to us that beating is a regular thing, as a cultural thing, and some of it comes from the Christian background. It was very old-style Christianity where they really do literal interpretation of the Bible, where spare the rod, spoil the child is really thought to be that's what you do, and so even pastors admit that they beat their children, and that's just how they deal with punishing their kids.
Were they able to, will Calgary kids be able to change the view of that?
Well, that's the thing. How do you change something that's a cultural issue? Because we're coming from a different mindset, and they're perhaps 50 years behind us in that. But how do you go in and just try to impose your view on them? And I think it's, for me it's a very difficult thing, because the right of a child is the right of a child, and that's universal. And I think you have to advocate for kids in those situations no matter what. But it's a matter of how do you do that without offending or pushing away the people that you're trying to...
coming from a high ground and saying, nah, you should be doing it this way.
Yeah, it's very easy for us to make judgments on those things, and so it's a way of trying to find how do you advocate for kids in a way that is positive and works with the community, and trying to find those solutions together. And then those are not easy issues to deal with. And it was difficult for the kids that were on the trip, and it was difficult for the adults on the trip.
Was language a difficult issue that you deal with? Like, is there a translator always in between of you guys talking?
No, I mean, Kenya, the official language is English and Swahili. So most people there speak both. The younger kids are only just learning English, so where the issue comes really is in the accent. Kenyans have a very heavy accent because of the Swahili, and so it can be challenging to attune your ear to the accent and to figure out sometimes what people are saying. And it was particularly challenging for the kids on the trip who were thrust into a situation where they're in a foreign land and foreign culture. They're the only white kids there, and they're being swarmed by kids. And it's very hard when you're being swarmed and you've got kids who are speaking very heavy accents to understand. So the first few days, and we document that in the film, the one thing everybody thought was, it's going to be so easy for the kids to connect with the kids, because that'll just be easy. Well, that was one of the most challenging things, was to get them to actually connect. And it took a week before they really started to make some strong connections with the kids in the home.
Let me ask you some technical questions as a filmmaker. What kind of equipment did you guys end up using to make the film?
We shot, originally I started shooting, the whole film shot in HDD. Originally started shooting with a Sony A1U camera, because that's what we could afford to get. And it was a great little camera. Actually, it was perfect for traveling to Africa, because it just looks like a consumer camera. But the image quality is excellent. And so a good portion of the film was shot with that. And then we had a couple Sony Z1Us that we used, also HDD, and that was used for a big portion of the filming in Africa. So we used the two different cameras, but everything was shot in HDD.
Did you guys look at the footage while you're shooting it, or you just basically shoot it and
No, we just
bring it back?
Shot it and brought it back, and we didn't really have capacity to look at it while we were in Africa other than on the camera. But your days are so full there that it's exhausting emotionally every day, because you're just being inundated with things that are happening, and people who are coming to greet you, and it's a very exhausting experience. So we just didn't have time to look at footage while we were there. We just communicated closely between my producers and myself and the camera team in terms of what was being shot and what was being gathered, and so we had a good idea of what the stories were that were happening.
Right. A question from aspiring filmmakers and filmmakers. What is the budget for the film, and how did you guys manage to finance it?
That's the $64,000 question, isn't it? Well, the budget's about $450,000, but we're still struggling to try to get that. $40,000 to $50,000. $450,000. But basically the majority of the film has been raised through donations and loans that we've had to take out, our own credit cards that we've put out, and we've been working on trying to get government financing, but that's been challenging. So it's we're still in a deficit position. The film's almost complete, but we're still trying to raise the money so we can pay off our bills and post-production expenses.
Right.
Really, the lesson was I really believed in the story, and my producers believed in the story, and we just went out and made it. Because if we hadn't, the story would have disappeared. And I think it's a really important story about what's possible within our school system and what's possible in terms of human beings helping other human beings. How important it is to just make connections. It's not about, it doesn't have to be about giving money, but giving of yourself and giving time is, I think, a much more powerful tool to give people, including ourselves, and we have tremendous things I think we can learn from that.
Yeah, I definitely see more filmmakers and even studios that are making more films that have a message and want to change things. Like the example I have in mind is the Participation studio, like the new film studio set up by eBay Rich investor, and it's great. I mean, it's not just.
I think we're at a crossroads.
Yeah,
I think we're at a crossroads in society right now, and I think if you look at Africa as an example, we can see that the model that has been there in the past in terms of aid isn't working. Certainly there's some successes there, and it's not to say that there aren't good things happening there, but I think overall the idea of aid is not what people there want to see, and I think it's detrimental because it keeps people in a position, and we've seen it even within the kids at the orphanage, that they think that we're just going to come in and save them. They think that we're going to come in and give them money to start businesses or whatever it is, and that's not empowering. And I think what we need to do
that's a handout.
That's a handout, and that's not going to change the model of what's happening. And I think we really need to look at models that are about empowering not only ourselves but empowering others, and doing that through other methods than just giving money. And I think we have so many skills that we can share, and certainly money is important. I'm not trying to suggest that it isn't, but I think we have to look at different ways of how we give our money and how we share our resources. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that people in Africa know how to solve the problems. They just don't have the resources to do it. And I think if they just have a better share of resources and more sharing of skills, we could solve the problems much more quickly than through the aid model that has been used in the past.
All right, well, thanks a lot, Matt, and wish you best of luck on the film, and hopefully with your film and with other good-hearted people will make a dent in the Africa problem.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.